This episode of the Better To podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of the Better To Burnout series, which includes her latest releases of Fairy Tales and I Love You and Is Love Just Another High. Get ready to root for Jen Poff, a struggling actress whose career is about as lively as a wilted flower. Her soulmate, Wes Blankenship, is a music maestro with a heart of gold. Along comes Mason Langford, a Hollywood big shot with a cutting proposal to help Jen get back on the map. But hold the phone, folks. Mason has a ginormous ego and cares more about his agenda than helping Jen. What's his hidden agenda? Jen soon realizes the sinister catch, but it's too late, and Mason springs an ultimatum on her. Can she bear to be apart from Wes for 5 long years? Get ready to be whisked away on a wild emotional ride with this gripping story. Love is Worth Waiting For is a second chance rock star romance with a fake relationship set in Hollywood and comes with a happy ending. Love is Worth Waiting For is available now at most online booksellers. Hi, gang. Welcome to the Better To podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Danny Saber. Danny has a project that he's working on that is helping someone from the past, Micheal Hutchence, return with a new set of songs. Well, at least a couple for now, but there's more to come, hopefully. Anyway, our conversation talks about Micheal, other bands that he's worked with, and so much more. So tune in. All right, here we go. Hi, Danny. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I want to talk to you a little bit before we get into the main topic of what you're releasing with Micheal Hutchence. But let's go back to you as an artist. I mean, you just are not a music producer. A lot of people know you as a music producer, but you've also been a musician. And I guess I want to focus a little bit on, when did you realize that, hey, I want to do this for a living, that this isn't just a hobby. I want to learn how to do everything that I ended up doing.
Well, it all started with just playing the guitar. Look, I appreciate the question, because that, funny enough, is all this stuff that you see. And back in the day, it was all just a vehicle so I could play the guitar. So, but I also kind of learned early. I mean, like all kids, you go through phases, and, it started with Jimi Hendrix, and I got, kind of into like Steely Dan, and I wanted to be a studio musician. And I just realized, and it's funny how you measure yourself against guys in your school. And I mean, I wasn't even, in the conversation as who's going to make it. There was a guy, but like all the people that were sort of above me, so to speak, always let me like hang out. And it's funny because the one guy who I was in, we had a jazz band class, and one of the other guitarists who I'm still in touch with to this day, there was like 30 guitar players, 10 drummers, 2 bass players, and like 1 piano player in that class. But one of the guitar players was Craig Ross, Lenny's guitar player. So we went to high school together, and we were in jazz band, and Craig was just another guitar player in the jazz band class.
Wow.
But he wasn't just another guitar player in the jazz band class. He was like, you could tell he was who he ended up becoming. It's funny, it was like, he was more like, he was probably a good student, a little more, at least from the outside looking in, he was more like, I guess straight is the right way to say it, but he turned out to be like a full-on balls-out rock star, and on top of that, an amazing guitar player. But he was a great musician in high school. Like he was probably, you just knew that guy, this guy's going somewhere with it, and there was a couple other guys, this guy, Paul Peterson, who was sort of, he looked the part in high school. He was like, we ended up in a band together eventually. So, I always knew, I just knew it was not even a thing of like, pretty much within a year of starting to play, I just knew what I wanted to do. But I also figured out pretty early on that I kind of had a knack for putting stuff together, as opposed to like, I'm going to survive just like on playing my guitar. Yeah. And then I got my hands on a drum machine and a keyboard and a little Porta Studio pretty early on, like a couple years in. And I started making little songs. And then I kind of always imagined, it'd be so cool to make music for films or TV or something like that. But in those days, there was no way to even begin to know how to get into anything. It was like everything was cryptic. Knowing how to get distortion out of your guitar was like some mythological journey, because there was no information. other than, a couple of magazines and what your friends had. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the thing. I was always sort of, once I knew I was probably, 14 or something. I started playing at 13. So a year and a half in, I knew what I wanted to do. Like there was no question about it. It was just like the phases you go through and the evolution of it, and then starting to see it clear of, oh, here's a way to go. But I never could have imagined,
No, I
you're
remember.
15 and you're going to see the Rolling Stones. You could never even like dare to, someday. I mean, it's so beyond stupid that it's like,
I get it. I
I'll
mean,
be jamming with them one day.
I get it. I mean, I remember. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to be a bass player. I took lessons when I was 18, and I wanted to be a bass player, most likely for the wrong reasons. And I remember when my stepdaughter, I was already divorced from her dad, but she was acting out, and my ex-husband's like, "You need to come talk to her." I'm like, "Okay, fine." She's like, "Dad bought me a bass," and I'm like, "Okay."
Um,
I'm like, "Did you?" Did you know I played? She goes, no, I didn't. Even though it was around, she never knew. I said, so why do you want to be a bass player? Because I want fame and fortune. And
yeah.
I just looked at her and said, do it for the music. If you don't do it, if you don't love playing, then you're never gonna make it. Because there's a lot of ups and downs in this business, and you're never gonna make it unless you really love it. And that
Yeah.
sounds, I'm not dissuading
No, it's
anybody from
true.
picking it
I mean,
up.
yeah, it's but let's be honest, like when you're 15-year-old boy, all you really want to do is, you know,
Girls.
meet girls and be cool.
Hmm.
But then somewhere along the lines you start to but there was more to it. It was always like there was almost like a pretty much from day one actually, because it took like I saw a poster of Jimi Hendrix when I was 11, and it always seems to be dad. It's like I worked my dad for 2 years. It took me 2 years of just because I had a friend down the street who had a guitar. So I used to go sit in his room and play his guitar, more than he played it, and drove him nuts. Then I, worked with my old man for a couple of years, and I finally got the guitar. My mom was kind of like, they were both right. My dad was cool with it. His only thing was, if I buy you a guitar, you're going to play it for a week and it's going to end up under the bed. And I'm like, no, it's not, it's not, it's not, it's not. And then my mom was sort of like knew instinctively what comes along with that guitar. She was right. But
Yeah.
yeah. But then at some point you start to kind of figure it out. There's definitely a spiritual component, and I think that's part of and it's not anyone's fault. It's just the world we live in now. Like there's a whole, that whole thing of being compelled to do it. You got to be compelled to do it if you're really going to do something with it, and but you don't.
Right.
There's like a kind of the talent show paradigm has sort of changed what's held up as success,
Right.
and it is what it is, where like, where you were striving to be Jimi Hendrix or a producer, the Quincy Jones and George Martin, and like who sits in that role now? I don't know. There isn't really, the world just doesn't work that way. There were certain things you couldn't escape. You couldn't escape Prince and Madonna and Michael Jackson, but biggest has never always meant just because something's the biggest doesn't mean it's the best, but it kind of used to mean that. Like the Beatles were the biggest.
Yeah.
You could make the argument they were the best. Michael Jackson was the biggest.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. It was
definitely was. I think he's the greatest individual artist of all time, So the success was more than just, it was built on something really deep and like with Michael Jackson, I mean, from the time the guy was 5 years old, right? It was like, look at by the time he was 17, he could look at Paul McCartney and they were on the same level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You had to have talent back then. It wasn't something that could be faked. I mean, sure, you can process certain things and clean certain things up, but now you can really clean things up. And the person that doesn't have the greatest voice, you can suddenly make them have a wonderful singing voice. You can make it, and then put it on, the internet and get all the likes in the world.
Problem. There's no filters anymore, But I think the one thing that's really the area that suffered, like all that is true, but it's that, and we went to go try to see the Rolling Stones the other night at SoFi, and I haven't been to a big, huge show like that in a while. And I mean, you get to the arena and the first thing, there's a loop on a PA speaker telling you all the things you're not allowed to do before you haven't even gotten the building yet. Welcome to SoFi. We are a non-smoking, non-vaping environment. You can't do this. You can't bring in bags. You can't do that. Yeah. It's like, why are you telling me all this shit? It was on there. You know, I'm going to a rock show. Like, I want to go and forget about the rules for a couple of hours, you know? And it's just, that's the world we live in now. Everything is so especially in California, everything's so overregulated and rules. And it's all about squeezing the gray area out of life and getting us. All the answers are inside our own heads. And from the time we're little kids, everything is geared to get us away from being able to be in tune with that voice. And if you're an artist worth anything, and I think that's the difference. It's more effective now. It's really hard to stay in touch. If you're under a certain age, you know, like, because like I was lucky enough to be old enough that the things that are really, and it's always been that way, but it's just way more. It's not like they are trying to do it. It's just a result of the technology and the world we live in, and it's a lot of things, but that's ultimately what it boils down to. You know, we're not being driven by that voice inside because everything's geared to get us not to listen to it, you know?
Well, I teach an intuition class, and one of the things I talk about is the fact that from when we're little, we are very in tune. We will pick up on things. We'll pick up on other entities. We know things that are going to happen. I mean, my parents weren't fighting. And at 8 years old, I'm like, you can go to Disney World by yourself. And they're like, why? Because you guys need some time alone. They weren't fighting in front of me. I had no idea they'd be divorced a year later. But my point is, I understood that. What I teach about, though, is the fact that between the political, the media, the religious aspect, our parents, our grandparents, there's certain things that they want us to present. We're supposed to present in a certain role in the world. Therefore, we have to tune off this stuff because somebody might think you're nuts.
Well, yeah, it's indoctrination is really what it is. And there's a system, but there used to be, I mean, I think where it's crumbling because there kind of was a little bit of a truth. And if you do X, Y, and Z, and you follow the rules, you got a pretty good shot at having a decent life. And and someone like myself who was like, went against the grain just because I don't know why, I just was that way. That never really applied to me. I never bought into that. So, but I think what's happened is the world now, it's and especially COVID. I mean, COVID, that lockdown, a lot of people got to, that was something you used to have to be able to earn, being able to just survive on your own. And it takes a lot of discipline to just get up every day and do your own thing. It really does. And a lot of people got a taste of that freedom and they don't want to go back to that structured, thing. And then on top of it, it's just people aren't buying it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, it's getting more and more like to the point where what's in front of your face, there's no collective consciousness anymore. There's no baseline truth everybody could agree on.
Right.
Just in the recent events, there's people that really think like, oh God, I don't care who you are supporting or what. That's not a good thing when somebody of that level that represents that many people gets taken out.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't care it's not about what side you're on. And I hope people are starting to see that now. And art's supposed to remind us of that. And if art is if all the soul and all the essence of what really, the teeth is taken out of it, especially with music, it makes it that much easier for people to buy into the bullshit, and that's where Michael comes in because hopefully, it's even though it's of another time, it's been done now. It's modern. It's like it's of this time. So it's a way to bridge those two worlds, hopefully, and remind people that, hey, this is what the real greatness looks like,
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my hopes. And it seems to be hitting people that way just based, the response since it's come out. It's been like, there's been no negativity and the focus is shifted back to, how great he was and how great his band was because they were great too. Without in excess, nothing I'm doing would mean anything. So that's the foundation it's built on. But Michael was an individual in his own right. He needed to express himself outside the confines of that. But at the same time, he was never going anywhere. It was not an either or situation. He's that kind of, it all gets back to where we started. He was compelled
Hmm.
to get it out, you
And
know?
I mean, a lot of times when you're in a band, it's like a marriage. These are your mates, and either you're going to go weather the
Yeah,
storm, or
right.
you're going to end up breaking up.
Yeah, he was
Um,
never. I don't
I mean,
buy that. A couple people have said that he wasn't going anywhere. They would have been like
oh,
if Duran Duran. They would have ended up circling back, had this fantastic renaissance. They'd be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All that shit would be done, and hopefully with a little luck, we had some plans for what we were doing, and it might have caught on, it might not have, but it would have given him that avenue to just get back to what drove him to do it in the first place without all the pressure and the.
I agree with you about him not leaving, because here's the thing. I remember when Max Q came out, and a lot of people were mortified when Max Q came out that NXS is breaking up and he was doing some films. And it's like, no, let him have his side piece. He needs that
And
side action,
that was everything was done to undermine that and make sure it didn't succeed for that precise reason.
which is unfortunate because it's a really
Yeah,
good record. And I have some of the 12-inch singles still,
yeah, the
which
people
are,
like it. Like
which
the record I did with him, it was, and we didn't really like especially the songs I wrote with him, we if he had lived, we would have refined them. The essence of what was there, but he never had that chance to kind of come back and just dial it in. But it still stands up because that's how great he was. It was always on. So even if we were in a writing session, the vocals, once he had it, he had it. It was like I always say, it's more like sculpting, doing vocals with the Michaels and the Micks and the Bonos of the world. Then so it's not like they go in and do 20 takes and then it's like, no, it's always there and they just keep chipping away at it and eventually it arcs to where it wants to be. But
well, that's the thing. He was an artist. I mean, he was very talented, and unfortunately, what happened is everybody started focusing on how he passed instead of listening to the music. When that CD came out, the solo CD, I was thrilled to have it. I was thrilled, and it moved me because the music was, there were some songs in there like Possibilities that were just so emotionally touching.
thanks. Yeah, I think that like I mean, for me personally, I think that's probably the best song. So it's the piece of music and everything about it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. So I appreciate that. But I think the other thing to not lose sight of too is because Michael was really special and unique in this sense. He was a really super hypersensitive sort of a person. Like he was in tune with all his senses, and then he had this ability to take it all in and then spit it back out with something that resonated with millions and millions of people. But that all came from empathy and just, I mean, it genuinely really was a kind of kind-spirited dude. He would do anything he could to help his friends. There was no kind of bitchiness in him, he had an ego and he had fun with stuff, but I never saw him misuse his power. You know what I'm saying? Like he was in a very powerful position to
Yeah.
take advantage of people in a million different ways, and he never would do that. Like he just wasn't wired that way. But that's also what contributes to the vulnerability that kind of put him in the position he was in for what happened to happen, and that's what people don't really, everyone wants to know what happened, well, how about why did it happen? How could it happen? Like, and
I
it's a
mean,
bit like the goose that laid the golden egg.
that's the thing with, I rewatched last night, The Last Rock Star, The Last Real Rock Star.
Oh, cool.
I had seen it back in 2020, and it was kind of weird because I'm looking at it going, yeah, well, you've interviewed Chris now, and now you're interviewing Danny tomorrow. So that was kind of surreal for a moment. But I did realize that you also had some other music on there there's like 3 other songs that played in there. Are you intending to ever release those 3 songs?
Yeah, I mean, there's about 7 altogether, and there's a couple. I think there's at least 1 or 2 nobody's heard. Like they weren't in there. There's a song that was sort of briefly featured called Madness that's really been written to be a duet. But the whole plan with that movie was, we spent 10 years trying to get a documentary made because we knew that we had this little batch of songs and there was no point in putting another record out. You saw what happened with the first one. Like there was no one to promote it. So we needed a vehicle to kind of promote the music. And um, a lot of time had gone by, and by the time The Last Rockstar got made, it was even more time because I discovered the music was discovered, let's call it, in 2008, somewhere in there. I mean, 2007, somewhere in there, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that vicinity. And then it was like pretty immediate. All right, let's try to get a movie made. That took another 10 years. And then, so I was careful because the plan was to recut the film and release it internationally and release the music with the film. Because it only aired in Australia and New Zealand. And for 100,000 reasons, it just didn't work out. So finally got to the end of last year, beginning of this year, and it was like all the fans knew. You had seen it. Yeah. So it was like, all right, well, let's throw. And then I kind of found myself in a position where I could put something out. So I just said, let's put it out. Let's put out a single and see what happens. And but I didn't want to just give it away.
Right.
If I had put this stuff on Spotify and iTunes, it would have been gone. It would have been over in 48 hours, no matter what I did. So it's too valuable, and if we as artists don't value our own stuff, how do we expect anybody else to? So it's worked out really great because, we did a pre-sale and 4 months in, and we're really just starting to tell the story now, and it's great. And it's an ongoing thing. And then there's other things kind of, falling into place. And there's some energy guiding this whole thing up above somewhere, because just to be in here now talking to you, think about, I think about this sometimes, all the things that had to not happen, that weren't allowed to happen, there was so many moments when there was this thing on the table, and I, was so hoping it was going to happen, and it just didn't work out, right? Because it wasn't allowed to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting, so that's been my thing. I'm just, got to like probably a while ago. It's like, it's not about trying to force the issue. It's just allow. It's like creating music or anything creative. You gotta. It's Bruce Lee. It's Be Water. It's yin and yang. You gotta harness the energy and allow things to happen. But then at the same, like they say, let the game come to you. But you still have to be proactive and take initiative. You can't just sit back. It's a really interesting thing when you look at it. And I think, story will probably, hopefully, if we get a movie made, that'll be part of the story, is telling the story of the story, because it's just really, really interesting how things can just unfold,
Well, they did Johnny Depp. They did that with when Johnny Depp was playing Don Quixote. The movie never got made. The movie stalled, but they ended up making a documentary about the movie being made.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I want to check that out.
It's quite a while ago now. But when I sit here and think, if I would not have seen you post about the press release, when you posted about the press release, I was like, well, maybe I'll wait to do this. And I was like, no, I heard the inner voice saying, no, do this. So I reached out, and that was last Monday, and here we are. So sometimes you have to take that initiative, even though it may not work out, you still have to be willing to do it.
That's true.
So let me ask you this. So I believe it is 2006. These tapes are unearthed. What is what do you do? You get this phone call that's saying, hey, I got this. What do you want to do with this?
Yeah, something like that. And then it was like, well, the first thing you have to do is listen to it. See, okay, there's all these ideas, but let's see what's there. Is there anything? But it was, because remember now, they were all on 2-inch tape. It wasn't like there was a bunch of Michael sitting with an acoustic guitar. Right. Here's the song, and it was very
pieces.
It was, and there was 30 around 30 of these ideas. Well, actually, no, because a couple of them came from me and him. There was some stuff, in fact, not that long ago. It wasn't lost, but I forgot we did it. I found one thing, and I think it might be the one. I mean, they're all great. The ones that people will actually hear are all very strong, because I'm not going to do anything. That would be the only real room for criticism at this point, is to try to put some shit out, garbage, for the sake of it. So there's a standard Michael set on his own end with his band that has to be met. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was basically it. Just start going through the stuff and figure out if any of it's even worthy of being heard. And that didn't take very long. We figured it out. Okay, yeah, there's some stuff here. And then it became, okay, cool. But then what are we going to do with it? And then the process of going through it and produce, it takes time, it takes money. It's like, great, I got all this stuff. And this is back. Well, yeah, I've always sort of had my own studio, so to speak. But, it's still the time and so that's been the interesting thing about this creatively, is how much technology has changed. and things I could do 6 months ago that I couldn't do 6 years ago, right?
Right.
And having that opportunity to kind of go back and keep chipping away and sculpting, without trying to not to screw the stuff up and do too much to it. So yeah, and then it's just like I said, it was about figuring out, all right, well, what are we going to do with it? And it took a long time for all that stuff to shake out.
Well, sometimes though the best pieces of music or best things take time. I mean, a wine does not taste good when it's first made, does it?
I don't know.
I don't really drink wine, but from what I understand, wine is better if it's
Martin in the
aged.
jerk. Bring us some fresh wine. What's with this old shit?
Yeah. So I mean, you have to. Art is like that. Sometimes art is more appreciated after it's been around for a longer time.
Well, that's true, and I think also too, like, there's a certain amount of leeway. I think people are going to want to like it. People aren't going to come into this, or at least most people, the fans, and like again, as long as I think it's important with, especially with anything Micheal would have done, it's always there's an honesty to it, right? Like even it's like I love my favorite line in Scarface. I always tell the truth, even when I lie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a truth to everything you can, and I've tried to maintain that with everything I do, where it's just like, which basically means you're not chasing somebody else's, trying to please the outside world, like
Right.
try to make something you think people will like. You've just got to go. That gets back to that inside the head thing, and that sincerity in the journeys through the process. And so that's the main thing to maintain, and just keeping the standard up. And the one thing that we kind of talked about a lot, which was a big, like, kind of front and center at the time because of the circumstances. Hold on a second, I got to. Was just, to give him the space to express whatever he wanted to express outside the confines of, like, the big, at one point, INXS probably was the biggest band in the world for a while. And that comes with a lot of, like, it becomes almost like a weight,
Right.
and it's inevitable, it's that balancing, trying to maintain what you have and keep moving forward. So the situation and environment I tried to help provide for him was anything goes. There's nothing's off the table. Let's just go where the music takes us. And if you're hearing something in your head, it's like it might be a guitar part, it might be whatever, and it's none of this. I'm the guitar player, you're the singer, and none of that, which is normal in all band dynamics, and just giving him that freedom and it was like kind of liberating for him. I mean, he told me, we talked about this stuff. So I've got a pretty solid sense of, like, what would fly. I mean, he could never be replaced, but at least you can keep that mentality the same,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're talking about success, and I mean, success a lot of the times we put people on pedestals, especially nowadays, only to watch them fail, only to knock them off. Britney Spears, I always say, is a prime example of that. We built Britney Spears up so high to watch her be knocked off. And when I go back to watching that last night, Micheal was at one point, yes, he was the rock star. Terry Nunn had wrote a song about him that is no longer available. She released it on one CD. It's not really listed anywhere, called Sacred and Profane. And it's a great song, but they named a record Sacred and Profane, but the song is not on there. But my whole point is he inspired other people. And so watching that, and yes, it brought up the moment of Oasis at the award show, and you saw him the next day. And when you think about how this person sits there and says this to him, and then when you look at where Oasis is now.
Well, right. Well, the fucked up thing about it was not Noel so much, but if you look closely, Liam gives him a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
We were all hanging out together. It was like, because don't forget, it's like Black Rape was nominated, so we had a table. Michael's there working as a presenter. I'm making a record with him at that time. Liam's like, bouncing around, sitting with us because, Sean and Liam,
Mm-hmm.
Liam held Sean in reverence because he was like the Don of Manchester. So we're all hanging out, and suddenly it gets up front, and it's like, the fuck is that about, man? Like, we're just breaking bread. Now we're in front of the people and you're going to take a dig. And I think, look, Noel I'm sure he wouldn't, if he had it 100 times. I've met Noel a few times. And I think, he's a brilliant, amazing person. And I think it's just, that's also being young. And, they were just sort of hitting their stride at that point. So it just was some unnecessary shit that didn't need to be said, but it did, but it hit, but it was kind of also, and that's where that tabloid worst fear nightmare shit in Michael's head comes into play. Now all of a sudden it's fucking real from your peers. It's one thing for the press to do that. They're supposed to do that. That's what they do. But anyways, it is what it is.
But I think that's what a lot of people don't recognize about musicians is, and even any kind of creative person, is that as much as we try not to believe our own reviews, we try to stay focused on what we're doing and true to ourselves. There's still the nagging thing of somebody not being happy or giving us a nasty review or saying something incendiary in the press that makes you feel like shit. And how do you get past that, especially when you have not just that, you have everything else going on in your life. And there's a lot of pressure on you to remain focused and creative.
Right. And I think it's more a case of too, like it depends on the individual. But one thing Bono told me once was the one thing all singers have in common is like a desperate need to be loved. Like, because it's like, what else would get you to go up? I mean, what singers do, like true frontmen that get up, I mean, other than maybe comedians, there's nobody more exposed, right?
Right.
And then it, like, depending on the personality of the person, they could hit it like, I don't give a fuck what anybody do. But we all want to, nobody does this to, that's the biggest line is when, I don't care if come on, nobody sits and goes through all this trouble to make music to not want people to hear it and people to like it. The difference is, again, that's that whole thing of the right word would be like integrity, I guess. Like, it's like the cart before the horse. Are you doing it to try to please people, or are you doing it and hoping it pleases people, right? Like, and staying true to whatever's driving you. So it's that balancing that thing,
And it's fine when
that's what's sort of gotten out of whack, I think, in the thing now. Now it's about a pre-existing hole to fill, as opposed to, oh, look at this woman, Janis Joplin. She's so talented. Let's build it. We'll figure out how to market her. There's a talent here. We need to build something around this so the world will get it. Not, okay, here's the hole. Let's drop in the person to fill the hole. And then the music, it's weird, man. I'll tell you too, as a producer, I've noticed a really, really crappy shift in the mentality of artists. I don't know any other way to say it. Where, look, it's great. We all want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with being a businessman and you're a businesswoman or business person and, building your brand and all that type of stuff. But it's gotten to the point now where, like, the stuff that I've done tracks with 3 or 4 artists that are just hands down, like it's immediate. And I've seen the artists shit can them because either A, they don't get it, they're afraid how it's going to, like whatever. The artist has become like the A&R person a little bit, like the mentality. It's not all artists, but that never would have happened. It was always, we were fighting the label. Like you never had to convince the artist when you knew, you knew. And now it's like, that is missing a lot of the times, and that's, I think, part of the fallout of that whole the paradigm shift and just what are you really even chasing? Why am I even doing this? Like, it's just changed.
That's the hard thing is you have to sit there and wonder, what am I doing if the younger generations don't understand the art of it? It's like the death of an album. A lot of people don't want to listen to an album straight through. They want to hit it on shuffle. And if it's on shuffle, then you're losing what the artist had envisioned.
I watched this really great documentary about disco. And when you really understand the history of disco, I thought I knew the history and I knew the basics. I knew where it came from. I knew what it represented. I knew quite a bit, but I never really realized how bastardized it became. I did, but I did. I mean, I got Rick D's Disco Duck sitting back there, but it started out as such a, again, like every movement, whether it's hip hop, rock and roll, whatever offshoot of the initial, let's call it the blues and jazz, are only America's only contribution to the world, like as far as an original art form. It always, whatever movement started, it always started like with disco. It came out of the gay clubs, and it really was really revolutionary because people just wanted to dance. And there were laws against people even being allowed to dance just because they were the same sex. And that was really what that was the soundtrack of. And it was such, and it took like, what, a year or two to go from this legitimate, amazing, powerful music to just getting so bastardized because there was a buck to be made. And that's probably the closest thing we saw back then to what we see now, where there was this manufactured component to it.
Yeah.
You know. But anyways, that is what it is. I
Well,
mean, the good news is, you know, there's everything bad. It's like the best result, the best advice I ever got was don't think in absolutes. Because, for example, I can point out if something fucked up now, I can also find a reason why it's great. You know, so there's, you know, it's just all how you look at it.
Well, when I look at, you know, you're talking about disco, and when we had this sudden resurgence of country, I'm like, hey, folks, 1980, early 1980, 81, we had Urban Cowboy, we had the whole push of country music. It was the big thing because my dad went from country music.
Yeah, me too. My dad had the cat Stetsons and the cowboy. My dad was a York Jew, and he used to joke around. He had this big Jewish star, and he would, I'm sheriff, and he would. That was right after disco, and the same guy gave it to us, didn't he? Old John.
I mean, he went from country, but my dad cracked me up because we went from country music. And granted, this is the man who had the wall on a cassette player that I borrowed, the Walkman. But then he went to Oingo Boingo. And I'm like, you go from country to Oingo Boingo. Okay, Dad. All right. Didn't understand it, but my dad did like music. He was
But when he was listening to country, what was it? I bet he was listening, like, you know, really
Willie and Waylon.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. It's like he wasn't listening to fucking Juice Newton.
No.
You know, it's like, you know who really got me to understand and appreciate country was Al Jurgensen, because I took Joe Strummer to see Ministry, and Joe didn't know who they were. And I'm like, you got to see that because Ministry is one of my favorite bands of all time, and especially live. So we go to see Ministry, and they're playing like the Palladium. I think it was the Dark Side of the Spoon tour. And there's this guy there's this figure on the side of the stage, and you could see he's sitting in a wheelchair, and he's sort of got a blanket over him. And Joe's like, it's fucking Timothy Leary, right? So we go in the back, you know, it's like I got Joe Strummer with me. I don't need a backstage pass. We just go, but somehow the next thing I know, we're in a limo with Al and Joe and Timothy Leary. We're up at the Mondrian, and you know, Al's invites us into his room, and I'll leave out some of the graphic details, but he's got his music going, and it's Patsy Cline and Hank Williams, and he loves, that's all he was listening to was country. But it was great because I got exposed to it in that environment. It gives you a whole different perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And just like anything, Waylon Jennings and, you know, Chris, that whole clique of the Outlaws, right? Like that's the real deal. That's just as legit as any other genre of music, you know. So again, it's the same thing. It started, you know, really going, and I don't think people really realize how much influence, not like, it's not even, it's more like mountain music. Mountain music and the blues is what made rock and roll. You know, it wasn't just blues. You know, the Irish that came over and brought their music.
Right.
And country's sort of a purer form of that.
True country.
But, it's all connected. It's all from the same sort of tree. You know, again, it just gets down to, is it, like people will say, is it good or is it bad? I love all music. But it's really, is it sincere? Is it real or is it jive? That's really what the question they're actually asking.
True, because I mean, a lot of times people just are putting singles out to put singles out now.
Yeah, so it is, anyways, it is what it is. What are you going to do? The only thing I can do is like do what I'm doing, which is make the most out of whatever opportunities I have to work on stuff. And I got a fantastic opportunity with Michael stuff. It's like a gift, you know, so.
But I have to say something besides Michael. I mean, I look at your resume and you have worked with a lot of different people remixing stuff. When you get a call or when you've gotten those calls that, hey, we want you to do this, what does that feel like for you?
Well, I mean, it's been a while now, but when and back in well, and it all kind of came out of everything for me really grew out of that black, the black red record,
Hmm.
which I produced about, was in the band. I played, so I am a producer. But the cool thing about remixing, it was actually Guy Osiri, my first manager, that sort of opened that whole world up to me. He's like, you need to do remixes. And I'm like, okay, what do I got to do? He goes, just take the vocal and make a new track. But this is in like the early 90s when just having an opportunity to get in a recording studio was like huge and to get paid for it and have a budget. And then the cool thing about doing remixes back then was if you did a remix, it was for a single that was about to come out. So you do it and it would be out soon. And it was sort of my little laboratory kind of graduate school opportunity to really go in and hone my skills. And the first one I did was Information Society, but the second remix I got to do was a Madonna remix. And I kind of took those kind of credits over to England, and that's what opened up the door, for everything else that followed. But like some of it was surreal. Like when I got the opportunity to do Bowie remixes initially, I did two versions of Little Wonder, and after Bowie heard them, I got a phone call. David wants to meet you. Which, I mean, think about how many remixes the guy gets done. And I got to go meet him and hang out, and that led to more stuff. And I think that's the thing that I'm proud of the most is if you look at my resume, all the people that really matter are usually on there a few times. It's not like, oh, we did one and then I always kept working with them. The same with you too. And what opened up that Butch Vig opened up that door because they had asked Butch to do one, and we had the same manager at the time, and Garbage was in full swing. So he suggested we do it together. And again, it was another opportunity, like to go into the studio with somebody and sort of get your masters, like in that case, in Butch Vigisms, like when I got to go in the studio with the Stones, it was like, advanced study of rock
Yeah.
and roll, because it's more than just the music too. It's absorbing, being in those camps and being around those people and just seeing how they do things, and one of the coolest things about working with the Stones was, on the way up, you meet people and it's like, all right, this is the way it's done, the way the big boys do it. And it's some guy who like probably maybe got a single deal and had a test pressing done, and that's as far as he got. And he's gonna, tell you, show you, and then and they're always like, telling you all kinds of negative, stupid shit and why you're doing it wrong and da 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 da. And then you get in a room with the Rolling Stones and you realize, hey, man, that's what I thought. And that's what I used to do. And that's what I thought. And you realize how many people coming up that are like, not being positive and helpful, have no clue what the fuck they're even talking about.
That happens a lot. You think that this person has all the information and they don't.
Well, that's what you come to realize. I came to realize, like, you can apply it to our current situation. I mean, it doesn't matter. I will say if it's the Rolling Stones or some band in a bowling alley. They're basically fighting, and it's the same shit in play, the same sort of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's fighting over the same shit. There's just more at stake, right?
Yeah.
And when it all said and done, I mean, yeah, there's some smart people out there, and there's definitely people with agendas, but for the most part, people are winging it, man.
Fake it till you make it.
You know what I'm saying? And they're looking out for themselves, and they're looking out for the best interests of the people around them. And yeah, within that, you get some bad actors and some people that are really up to no good. But I think for the most part, even most powerful people are just, trying to like do what's in their best interest. Hopefully it's just not at the expense of a whole shitload of other people,
This is true. So you talked about David Bowie, and I mean, you worked on one of your tracks is on the Saint soundtrack. You also did another song that you're not credited for on the Saint soundtrack, and that's Out of My Mind.
I don't know if my version is on there though. That might be
I don't think
why.
it's on the same soundtrack, but when I was looking up stuff, it was
Definitely
like
released
you.
it as a single. That was a whole thing where again, that's where the band sort of, it was well, I don't want to get into the details, but one of the band members just kind of fought tooth and nail because the plan was that was going to be on the soundtrack. That would have been a single. And one of my best friends, Dean Carr, directed the video. So we were all excited because we finally kind of had something we were like working on kind of together. And
Well, I know at the time that John Taylor was leaving the band, so there's a lot of issues at that point. But I
well,
just,
I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it definitely wasn't John Taylor.
I most likely know who it is, but I'm not going to go there either. So anyway,
It definitely. No, I don't want to. I don't because it's not. I don't.
no, it's a conversation that it's not
I don't
supposed to
want
be
to be
privy, and we're not
bitchy.
going there.
And
No.
there's more. It's more complicated than just be able to start throwing people under the
Well,
bus.
and I wanted to say this. The whole reason I brought this up is how many other things have you worked on where you were technically not credited?
Not a lot, to be honest with you. Not a lot. The biggest one, I think, and I did not get credited, but the one that sort of got the only one I really would even mention would be the Charlatans record, because basically that record came out of me and Tim and oh Jesus, Mark hanging out and just come over to the house, and we started messing around. They were in L.A. because the band's from Manchester or up. They're up from up north somewhere. I think Manchester. Yeah, they're from Manchester. They gotta be. Yeah, and it was a really organic thing. We were friends. Me and Tim had been friends for a while. I met Mark. We like just had an instant like man crush. I love that guy. And we just started to come over. Let's work on stuff. And the next thing we knew, we put our head up, and I think we had like probably 7 songs laid out, and we were practically done. And nobody even knew we were doing it. The label didn't know, the band. I mean, we just did it. And then it got like kind of presented, and everybody was like, "This is amazing," and then essentially I sent them everything, and they ended up going off and finishing the record and sort of downplaying my contribution. But the only thing is that record, you know what the release date of that record was?
What?
September 11th,
Oh,
2001.
one. Yeah.
So that's like kind of that wasn't a good day to drop a record. I mean,
No.
it's pretty good. I think it's a great record. I love that record, Wonderland. But it's all good. Again, it's not like, that's not why I'm doing it. And I would say, yeah, that has never really happened on anything that
And,
really matters. Like on Out of Control, I mean, I co-produced that song for sure, but it's all good. And when you're working with people like the Rolling Stones and David Bowie, and you serve at the pleasure of the president. You know what I mean?
right, right.
Like, so who am I to even? I'm just happy to.
I get it.
I got a little footnote in the books. I'm a footnote in the history books. So who's going to go in and start bitching about? I was lucky to be there. Let's be honest. And then within that though, I definitely did my bit, which was what they were looking for. They needed a little fresh injection of youth at the time, and just and I did my bit because they kept asking me back.
Well, and please understand, I wasn't opening a Pandora's box for
You
you.
have to apologize for the question. It's a fair question. It's like it's cool.
So
Yeah.
what was it like to work with Alice Cooper?
Well, that was really interesting. But Alice was awesome. I mean, Alice, the coolest thing about him is, we basically wrote. I mean, again, it's like I can get it all. There's some kind of a weird side to that story, but it boiled down to this. We basically wrote most of those songs on the spot. So every day he'd come and okay, what are we going to do today? Hey, I'm like, hey, what, how do you feel about maybe like, digging in? It's like Reed Kubrels used to say, it's like playing Cowboys and Indians. You got this rich catalog of amazing tracks that are like the cornerstones of like a genre of rock and roll. So it's not like I'm going to go and rip off Schools Out, but you've got so much, what's the right word? There's just so fertile ground there for inspiration. And Alice was cool like that, so, and it was similar to working with Michael, because a lot of stuff would come out of his head and it would end up being, oh no, that's a guitar part, or we did this like kind of Brian May-ish laid multi-track guitar lead thing, and he sang me every part. He sang me the harmony, and it was amazing. We were like finishing each other's sentences, and I mean, he's Alice Cooper, and I'm pretty proud of that record. I mean, ultimately, the band. I'm like, at one point, I'm like, dude, don't you have a band? Because there was sort of it was a situation where the band sort of wasn't in the equation. And at some point, I'm like, don't you have a band? And come to find out, his touring band was Chuck Garrett, and Kerry Kelly. They fucking amazing. And I think the best two or three songs on the record actually came from them, because it's a lot of pressure to sit there and write a song like, at least one or two a week. It's just okay, so it was cool working with him, man. I mean, it's like, again, it's like you're working with an icon. It's
like Ozzy.
It's funny because interestingly enough, the other interesting thing about that is when I was working with him, he still wasn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is sort of relevant, to our little story now, and kind of came to find out why, which was preposterous, as egregious as In Excess not being in, Alice Cooper not being in 2007 or whatever it was. And there's a whole genre of music. And people don't realize, I didn't realize, he was around in the 60s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, go look it up. Zappa signed him in it was like 67, I think. It was real early. I always think of Alice Cooper as the 70s because that's when he had all this real big success. But they were, pounding away in the definitely the late 60s.
Wow.
And he was doing the famous story Alice told me is, and I've heard it, it's common knowledge if you're an Alice Cooper fan, but they were playing some venue in LA and it was all peace and love. And these guys come out and just are delivering. It took them, he said by the end of the first song, they had cleared out like 1,000 people. It was empty. The only three people left were Shep and Frank Zappa and maybe one of the band's girlfriends. And Zappa's like, anybody that can clear a room this fucking fast, I got to sign.
I once worked with a guy who he was a stock boy bagger at a grocery store in Arizona. And he said that Alice would come in, baseball cap on, golf shoes, come over and say, okay, this is what I need for my groceries. Can you go get it? And pay him and he would go get the groceries for him. He's like, he was so normal. It was weird because I was expecting Alice Cooper to be Alice Cooper. But no, he was very
well, yeah. And I mean, I think that's what kind of happened with Alice is that way before I met him, but he lost sight of where the persona ended and he began, and that's what got him. I mean, he almost died. Like he was in really bad shape back in the day. And I think his wife had a lot to do with helping him pull it all together. And so the Alice Cooper I worked with was just, as far as a person with their shit together, was amazing. I mean, he played golf every day. Once he was in the 300 club. That's what he called it. He actually he planted the seed for me to start golfing because I had never even thought about playing golf really. And he would talk about it. That's all he was really interested in was golf and music. And he got to, a really good place in his life, I think, because that guy went through a lot, and he was dead normal. He was just a good, normal, solid guy. But then you start driving, I was in Laurel Canyon and then you're going up and we went on a couple drives together and that's where Zappa lived. That's where we auditioned for Zappa. And this is, I had a couple of those. I worked with Ray Manzarek's son, and Ray came over one day and just sitting in a house in Laurel Canyon, hearing stories about Laurel Canyon from people like that is pretty amazing,
Oh, I'm sure. Because I mean,
Alice is just, he's awesome, and more power to him, man. Those guys deserve it. What's great? I mean, if you look at all of them, the one thing they all have in common, they all got burned. The Stones got ripped off. They all woke up at one point and broke and owed a shitload of money in taxes. So they all came out the other end for the most part. They're all doing well. Actually, I don't think Alice ever got burned because he had Shep from day one. Shep always looked out for him. But most of the artists of that generation, like David Bowie So Alice told me when he got his first royalty check, he wanted to go out and buy like a yellow Ferrari. And Shep said, no, you're buying a house. And he bought a house in Phoenix.
Nice.
And I don't know if he still lives in that house, but like So that takes Alice out of that.
But
But the rest of them did, and that's what's, goes in a lot into shaping who they ultimately became.
well, it affects who you are. I mean, when you go through the challenging times, that changes who you are. I mean, you know that everything can be turned from being golden to crap in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. I know.
We all do. So, yeah, well, I was going to ask you about your Mustang. If that was, I thought you were driving a Mustang in the
Hey,
last
my
rock.
Mustang. That's show business.
Kind of figured, but I had to
That was
ask.
pure show business.
I had to ask.
But I did have a 67 Firebird for a long time.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So, are there any artists that you ever, that you wish you could have worked with that you never got the opportunity to work with?
Yeah, but not too many that weren't, that hadn't died before I was doing stuff. Like I got to work with a lot of people I never could have even imagined working with. Um, Trying to think who. I mean,
Did you
there's
ever?
definitely like some bands I was really fan of that I wish but yeah, no, I mean, like yeah, but they would have had to come back from the
Like,
other side.
I mean, what about did you ever have the
Mm.
chance to work with Prince, or would you ever?
No, there you go. That's the one. That's the one. That's
Okay.
the closest I got. Well, interestingly enough, so when I was coming up, one of my best friends was Tony Guederas. He was like a bass player. We were always in bands together. And Tony actually played bass on, I think, on Kelly's Heroes. Like, 'cause we were like best friends growing up. And when I started like producing and stuff, if I could, if there was an opportunity for him to play, I'd get him on it. So he played on Kelly's Heroes. He played on the Black Grape song. He was in a band with David Coleman. And I introduced him to this guy, Mark Aber. I think I introduced him to Mark. Yeah, I would have done it. And Mark he was in a band called Aggression, but he was Mickey Rooney's stepson. And then David Coleman was Lisa Coleman's brother. And David, he wrote Around the World in a Day and worked with like a genius sort of cello player. He was really into Middle Eastern music. So they had a band together. And so I kind of was in the orbit of Wendy and Lisa a little bit, but I think it was after they had left Prince. But the closest I got to Prince was I had a room in the record plant. I had the upstairs sort of production suite. And that's where me and Michael worked actually when we were writing and stuff. Or one of the places we worked. I had it while Michael was still here. And I remember one day Prince was coming into the studio. So they had the room all ready for him. And, it was like so awesome. It was so Prince. They had put all this purple sort of billowing stuff. And his guitar, one of his guitars was on a stand in the room that was always there was his guitar. And then they had fixed the room up and made it all purple. And I don't know what he was coming in to do, but I never got to see him. Oh, and the other time I got to see Prince was one of my first jobs was I did like monitor mixing and backline at the China Club.
Okay.
And Prince would come into the China Club, and there was a downstairs sort of VIP room, and they had this really amazing fish tank. And Prince would always be standing in the corner, like full on Purple Rain era, with the round glasses, and he would be just standing in the corner. I remember seeing him in the corner, but yeah, I wasn't quite, but yeah, Prince would have been the one for sure. That's the one guy. I mean, just to even just get to spend a day in the studio with.
It would have to be an incredible experience
Like I got to
because
spend a day in the studio with Eno, and it was just hanging out in the studio, me and him alone in U2 studio, and just throwing shit at the wall. Like just trying different stuff on a song. But just being in a room with him. And I'm telling you, you absorb so much. Just having, everything I am is really the end result of all the people I've had the opportunity to be around, and always somebody being there, like, at the next level, not just musically, but as like sort of mentors.
Yeah.
So now I felt this way for a few years now. I'm sort of, I was always the young hotshot kid. So it's like making that transition to being the more
statesman.
Yeah, and it's just a different time now. I think what people value is different. Like to me, that was everything. I mean, I used to kind of get shit for it because like I was really close with Verdine White. It's like, I gotta do a record with Verdine. Verdine's gonna produce me. Why are you getting Verdine? It's like, because it's fucking Verdine, bro. Like, are you crazy? You know, like the business side people, you know, you need to do it by yourself and you gotta bring all these people in. And it's like, no.
Well, and and that's the thing, people don't necessarily appreciate what has come before. And that brings me to the fact that I don't live in Los Angeles, but I've heard that the Viper Room is going to be kind of turned into a museum type thing. They're building condos
I heard
around it.
so many things with the Viper Room. I heard it was getting closed, and I heard it was, I don't know what the hell's going on with the Viper Room, to be honest with you. I suppose I could find out, but yeah, I'm not sure.
But I mean, that goes back to a different time because the Viper Room was known for, besides River Phoenix, it was known for breaking people in, making these all-star bands that would happen. The Neurotic Outsiders got their start there. So
yeah, it's true.
So
I'm looking you up. I'm curious now. Concerned with plans to redevelop the iconic Viper Room. All right, this is pretty recent. Redevelopment of the iconic Viper Room in West Hollywood has been subjected to criticism from neighbors concerned with project plans. Located along Sunset Boulevard, the proposed project would include an 11-story hotel. Yeah, I heard they're tearing that whole shit down, and there's a lot of that going on in LA right now, so I'm not sure. But see, the Viper Room too, it's not even about the Viper Room so much as the person who owned it and the reason he created it and the time we were in and the possibilities of all the things that could happen based on all the people and the vibe of the energy of the world we lived in then, you know, and the people going there, right? Like, yeah, Johnny's place, and he basically opened it up to have a good, cool place to go hang.
Yeah.
And it fulfilled all that. I mean, there was like a magic to that place because of the way it was run by Sal, where anything could happen. It wasn't like that every night, but there were moments where all the, like the night Michael was his last public performance and Billy Gibbons is walking down the street and Sal grabs him and pulls him in and he's pointing. I'm like, come on, man. I hand him the guitar, right? He does a solo, gives it back. Like shit like that. People losing their mind. I mean, can you imagine being in the audience that night?
No.
And none of it was filmed. None of it was recorded. It was a moment in time, which is, I think, even better. There's just some pics from my buddy Jim Steinfeld. But so it can be in the memory banks, where now everything is, which is fine, but everything's documented now. There's no mistake.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You're losing something because how much are you enjoying if you're sitting there holding a phone? If you're holding a phone, watching everything, are you really enjoying what's going on around you?
Yeah, no, it's different. It's a different time.
I mean, it's great to look
back. You couldn't have a Viper Room now because it wouldn't even, nobody would want to go to it. That's not what they even are looking for anymore. There's a whole different energy now and a vibe, and maybe you could, but I don't think it would be the same level of. It's just it's just different, it's just different. But that's what makes it great, right? Like it was a reflection of the time it was in.
Right. I mean,
the space itself was cool. I mean, now it's a really kind of historic space. When you start going back, that whole area, it was this place called the Central. Before it was the Viper Room. Funny enough, that's Bernard. Cool.
So my sound guy had 2 questions. And one of them is, what is the one thing in a studio that makes a session go well?
The one thing?
Or are there many?
Well, I think there's one thing that I think has to be there for the 1,000 other things, the many other things to happen, and that's the environment that's created, right? Like I don't mean the physical environment, I mean the environment, the feeling in the room. And it was always my partner, John X, was the first time I ever really, not the first time I ever went in the studio, but one of the first times I went in the studio was a place called Fiddlers, and it was on Melrose. And John was like the house engineer, and I mean, he couldn't have been more than 20 years old. and he had like blue hair and one blue sock and one pink sock. And, he was just this, but his energy and his vibe, he was like the kind of guy that would give you such a hard time, but do it in a fun way. And I always used to tell him, man, someday you're going to be my engineer and da 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 da. And we ended up going all over the world together. And and John was the one, though, the first one where I ever kind of experienced that, where you walk in a room and there's just like a vibe. And you're not overwhelmed by the fact you're in a recording studio. As a kid, I was probably 18 years old. So that to me is, I think, the most big. And that comes from just like the way you treat people and like just the energy in the room and the energy you're projecting. And then the art of, I think this is another thing that's probably getting a little bit lost, but that's why, I bet I've been in the studio with Rick Rubin. Rick is a great example of that. Like, he doesn't really do a lot of anything technical, but he has an energy and a vibe that like his mere presence creates, right? And a lot of that's built up. And then it's, obviously there's a lot of other things that go into it. So he's like a good example of that side of being a producer, I think, at least from the outside looking in, so you've got to create an environment where, and you hear about this on movies too. It's like where the artist has the freedom to fail, because it's just the freedom to go wherever they're not feeling self conscious, So that's the one thing I would stress to people, and it just starts with an awareness, because it's not something you can tell anybody how to do. A lot of it is the charisma. It's just creating that, like we're doing right now on this podcast. This is what you're projecting and your attitude and your energy.
And there's a lot about trust. I mean, whether it's the energy projection, but in order to be really on and connected and be able to be creative, you have to be in a place where you trust. You trust that you have the freedom. You have
but it's chicken and egg. It's like, where does the trust come from? The trust comes from that. You're not going to trust the motherfucker until you feel comfortable with it.
That's very true.
And it's not something you can even try and do. It's a weird thing to try to describe. The best way is to kind of be exposed to it, like I said with John, and then you recognize it, and then then you put the assistants in lab coats, and we used to do so much crazy fun shit and just go out of your way and set up slot cars. Michael liked slot cars. We used to set slot cars up to scale, just whatever it may be. You start to create this, because we're just a bunch of kids that never grew up. I mean, that's the whole point. Is going back to what we first talked about, staying in touch, with that inner little child that theoretically, under those circumstances, is living the dream. So why would you be miserable? And that's kind of this like thing with Michael's whole situation is it got so heavy from the outside that it disrupted all of the fun, good stuff. And if I could do anything, it was just like, okay, well, we're in the room, man, all that shit goes away. That's why there's no pictures of us. There's only one picture of me and him in the studio. Because the last thing we're going to do is start whipping cameras out. It's like he's trying to escape that shit.
Right. I mean, when you listen to Save Your Life, I did get a little, it did touch me a lot. And I mean, I had heard it before when I watched when I watched the show Last Rockstar 4 years ago. But hearing it without knowing it, going back to that, when I heard it the other day, there's something very touching, because in a way, there's that song, and it's like, there's a man that had hope, but then there's a man that had great pain, which a lot of times makes an artist that much greater, because they are in touch with their emotional side. And there's somebody that you can resonate with because you can experience your own pain through that music.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And the other thing, again, it gets back to that thing of honesty as an artist, right? Like most of his songs, it was pretty much like, it's like a comedian who uses their own, it's like therapeutic, he's using all the shit he's dealing with. It wasn't always negative, but it's just, he's channeling it into and expressing it and coming back out with it. And then that's what the people tap into, because they feel it and relate it to their situation, And it was like a lot of auto, because it was all coming from a sincere place. He didn't need to go find some shit to write about. He
No.
may read a book that inspires him, or see a movie that inspires him, or listen to another record that inspires him. But it's still all coming through that filter of him, and his
Well, and
experience, you know?
the last two, the two lines that stuck out from what he had last wrote in that hotel room was about the monkeys outside and the hook inside, the hook into him. And it's like, at what point that hook can be looked at a couple of different ways, and only he would know. The hook is, the hook that would yank you out from celebrity, that you're done. Bye, your
Yeah,
15
that's
minutes are
right.
over. Or the hook of, I'm trapped and I can't get off I can't get off, if you use a fishing analogy, that my time is near.
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Well,
mean, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, so you don't, that's the one thing about lyrics is, and I think I was reading something about something you had said, that back in the day, lyrics had so much more meaning. They weren't just something that was straightforward, that you weren't opening up them for interpretation. Where now, I mean, like with Michael, there was always something underlying that you could look at. It was honest, but there was also sometimes some subtext that you could look into.
Well, yeah, and what I kind of really meant was, it's not even about the lyrics, it's about the way people perceive them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm not like, people says, when does he say? It's like, that's up for you guys to decide, and let it mean what it means to you, right? Like, what it means to you is all that really matters to you. The important thing is that if it's hitting you in a way that it's moving you or making you feel a certain way, or think, inspiring you to think
Mm-hmm.
and feel, then it's legit. And it doesn't matter if it's Taylor Swift or Micheal Hutchence or Bob fucking Dylan. If it's moving somebody, it's all relative. That's, again, gets back to that thing. It's like, that's what I learned, how to not, when you start out, you're very opinionated as a kid, and this is what's cool, this is what sucks. And as you grow and you mature, and Sean Ryder helped me see this too. It's like, it's so easy to knock stuff, but if it means something to somebody, then it's valid, because it's done what it's supposed to do. So it's not for anybody else to judge. It's really personal, right?
Right.
It's just the package it's wrapped in. But
Right.
I can sit here and go, that's so stupid. That music's so stupid. But no, if it's fucking emotionally hitting somebody.
Well, there's a person I
Room
know.
of interpretation. Let it mean what it's going to mean to you, because it may mean something totally different to somebody else. And when it's all spelled out, again, that's removing the gray area. It's like, no, we know what it means, because we know what toilet paper this person uses, and we know the last time they farted, and we know everything about the artist now, to the point, and we know that because there's a video that's specifically showing you, with the lyric video, of what these images it doesn't leave any room for the listener to use their own sort of creativity, because just listening to music is creative.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to kind of wander and go where it takes you. So that's kind of what I meant. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. Again, people always want to reduce everything to like a culprit and a victim, but it's not. It's just is what it is. Both can be true at the same time,
One statement that somebody had told me once that really drives me nuts is, feelings aren't facts. But you're feeling something when you listen to the music, and somebody else may feel something different. So while feelings may not be a tangible fact, you still are emotionally connected and you still feel something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would say feelings aren't fact feelings are fact in art. Feelings aren't fact in math.
Right.
That's the problem. The feelings and the facts are going into worlds they shouldn't go into, right? And right. Disciplines they shouldn't be applied to. But in art, in the context of music and paintings and seeing a film and eating a great meal, feelings are the only facts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why when the person said it, I was just like, yeah, I don't agree with that, but I'm not going to say anything, because as an author, I have a character in one of my books that somebody said he's the vilest man in the world. And I'm just like, okay, At least I made you feel something. It may be that he's vile and you hate him, but I still made you feel something. People hated J.R. Ewing, but that show was very popular.
Yeah, again, but you know what's interesting about feelings and facts in like say science, like with what Terrence Howard's doing right now. There's a I can't remember the guy's name. It's one of these, really high level professor guys. There's a technical side to what he's presenting, but what I like about what Terrence Howard is doing is he's delving into something and he's trying to find another way of looking at stuff, and it's like, and the thing this guy said that was brilliant is and it's the same in music. Most great achievements, like just for me personally, usually come out of a mistake or something unintended, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where music, in the studio, that's part of maybe go back to the question, was it you say your son asked?
No, it was my sound guy.
The sound guy,
yeah.
Is like that openness to ask questions, and all the great, like, sort of momentous breakthroughs have come out of a mistake or something you didn't go, can't tell you many times where it's like, okay, I got a plan for the song, and here's all the things I don't want it to sound like, and it's like, but you got to allow the shit to happen. The difference is being able to recognize those moments and then build on them, right? And with the Weinstein, I think his name is Weinstein. He's on, a lot of podcasts. I think he's been on Joe Rogan because he said, like, even, there may be 99 things that Terrence Howard says that aren't like really true, but all it takes is one being correct. And that could represent a major, right? And it's like this idea of just shutting it down. No, like, debate why it's not valid and legit, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak,
Right.
And so that's where the feelings and the facts things, there's a fine line there, but when it goes too far, when it's like what you see right in front of your eyes is being denied because somebody says, I don't feel that. Like, I feel a certain way. So, but in music and art, feelings are everything, because that's the whole point, is to move you and inspire you to make, to go after something greater in your life, or to lift you up when you're feeling like shit. I mean, or whatever it may be, it's all emotion,
Yeah. I got another artist for you, Freddie Mercury.
Wow. Well, yeah, I got to work with Roger Taylor, but I never got to work with, obviously, Freddie Mercury Queen. But I'll tell you what, the thing that I had, the moment I had just semi recently, is I was listening to Under Pressure, and I got to go in a studio with Bowie. One of the things I got to do was go track some vocals with him. And I was imagining those two in the studio, just trying to one up each other. And go listen to that. Listen to fucking Under Pressure, and just listen to the way they're answering each other. And it's like, oh yeah, how about this? And like Freddie Mercury, I mean, it's just like so beyond, like.
But didn't we have?
He's like the perfect marriage of like super high level technical ability, but then as in tune and vibey as anybody you could ever imagine. And the same with David. It's like they both have this, oh, it's just so perfect. That's such a perfect record.
So then I have another song for you to look at then. David Bowie and Mick Jagger, Dancing in the Streets.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, a little different. They were just having, you can tell they were
having fun. I know. It wasn't the one-upsman.
But again, I mean, it was like, and I remember that was for Live Aid, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was for Live Aid that just happened to have 39 years ago. It was 39 years ago Saturday.
Yeah. But again, that's the thing. Everything is, again, it's all relative. It's like, both of those are great collaborations, and they both give you something on different levels, and neither is better or worse. It's just different. You can't really, music's not sports. I think that's the other problem, where this whole sort of like having a first place and a second place, and when that comes into the equation, because again, it's all subjective. But so it leaves a lot of people out of the equation, and it lends itself to certain type of artists thriving in that environment, right?
Mm-hmm. But then is that why, since it's not a sporting event, is that why we start with these flame wars or whatever you want to call them on social media, that the artist goes after another artist?
Well, yeah, but that's competitiveness.
Well,
That's
that's
like
what I'm getting at.
that's
I
a
mean,
healthy
sports is competitive.
there's a healthy like sort of like the whole and is it you know and again I think that's the difference. Like that used to be manufactured by the press.
Hmm.
Now the artists are doing it themselves, but they're doing it for the same reasons. Let's be
Yeah.
honest, for the most
Yeah.
part. Like, are you talking about like beefs?
Yes. Yes. I was
Yeah,
talking about beefs and I just couldn't think of the word. So that's where I
yeah,
went with
yeah.
flame wars.
But most we know why people do that.
Hmm.
And every now and then there's some genuineness to it, but there used to be like the Beatles and the Beach Boys famously were listening to each other's records, and it was everybody was making everybody better. So it's all how you use it, you know.
Right. Right.
It's all
Uh,
how you use it, you know.
yeah. Rich had another question, my sound guy. And normally I
Mhm.
don't do this, but when I told him you were coming on, he was excited. So is there one thing you can't live without in a session? Certain piece of equipment, or is it just going back to what you originally said?
Yeah, not really anymore. I mean, I kind of got everything. I mean, that's been one of the great, I guess, for me personally, one of the great positive um results of like the technology now is so like the future is so here, and people now, probably kids and stuff coming up, take it for granted. But like I've always said, I was really lucky because as gear became accessible, I got like a keyboard, and all I had was this one Juno 106, and just like wrapping my head around that, and a drum machine and a Porta Studio, and building tracks from that. And then all I got my hands on a sampler, and then my life changed. But I had that one sampler, and it was very limited things, and you had to be very sort of like thinking 10 steps ahead because I only had 4 tracks, and everything had to be sort of where now it's just you open up a computer and you could go from 0 to 10,000, like with all the soft synths and the plugins and the programs and there's a million things to choose from. Where every time I open up if it's a compressor, it's a DBX 160. I actually know what I actually use the box or 1176 or whatever it may be. I remember I had a real one of those at one point. So I think it's a little different perspective when I go to grab something. Or now, I mean, I always dreamed of having a Fairlight back in the day. Now I can have 10 Fairlights set up. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
like, so the access and then they all sound so good, and they're also like legit with the way they've been, with the way they've been constructed or whatever, with getting the filters right and like just doing all the stuff to make them really, you could almost, they have the same characteristics. And so, I guess if I couldn't do without anything, it'd just be my computer.
Yeah. Trust me, I understand that one. So let me see, is there anything else? I know right now that this is a limited pressing of the single.
Mhm.
And if it sells out, will there be another pressing, or is this just it and that's it, one and done?
That's a good question. So with the ones, the white version, probably not. We're almost down to the end of them. Now we may do something different. Maybe we'll do a different color or something like that. I haven't kind of figured that out yet. But now with the deco release though, with the red one, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The thing is now though, we got a lot of, it's interesting because it's really cool how I think people really value getting something tangible, especially when it relates to music. And that was sort of my thing in this. It's like, okay, I can just give the file away, but this is too special to just be some link you click on, right? Like it's gotta be, in fact, hold on. Yeah, no, can you see that?
Yes, yes.
No, but I mean, look at this. Do some shameless promotion.
That's
I
fine.
mean,
Nice.
it's really amazing. This
We're
company called Pirate Press made these for us.
Nice.
And I can pull, like I have the Marilyn Manson ones, and these are just as like I think they're even better than the ones that, and at the time, that's Universal Records
Yeah.
making these things. But it's just so cool. You know, it just really is. It really, it went beyond any sort of, you know,
Well, and the other
yeah,
cool thing.
just anything. It's gone beyond my, like, you know, what I was expecting. I mean, it really turned out good. And like this, the image was Chris, but it was originally just a side face. So the double image was created to be on this, you know.
Nice.
I took a lot of picture discs, and it's not knocking the picture disc, but like even this one, I mean, it's so cool. This is probably what inspired it. This is the Beautiful People remixes I did back in the day.
Nice.
But you know, you can see it's still been, you know, and this is fantastic. It looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the picture that got put on a picture disc, you know. That is so there's just something in bringing that back, meaning it's more, it's just not some thing in the ether, it's a tangible thing, but it's music. And we got so many requests for CDs that we just, you know, announced we're doing a CD, like a maxi single, just of One Way with some cool remixes, and you know, because the people were asking for it. So that's what I'm trying to do, is listen
To what they want.
what the fans want, and you know, give the people what they want, you know, within that. So look, I'm not ruling anything out right now. I'm not sure yet.
That's fine.
You
I
know, and
do.
if the demands are, because the red one, you know, Deco's doing the red version, so there's going to be there's plenty of those at least. And right now, you know, we've done really, really well. Everything's exceeded expectations, I guess, is what you could say, on every level. So you know, we already feel, you know, and like, not to forget, like, if you want to post it, it's go to bossonics.com. And you know, I would get one of those white ones while you still can, though, because we're fast running out of them. And you know, I think they're going to be valuable. I think they're going to be valuable. You know, the white ones are going to be the ones. You know,
So
I've been playing with some other colors.
Mhm.
And that's something I might go. You know, if there's a really demand to do more, we'll do some more. But I might like see what the fans think. Maybe like, you know, what color. You know, maybe I did a pink mock-up and purple. It looks cool in every color. You know, so we'll see. We'll see.
I mean,
The other thing I feel, though, and then I'll shut up, is
no, you're fine.
that this image is so iconic. You know, I feel like we created an iconic image between Chris's picture.
Yeah.
So the image is definitely going to live.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the last time people will see this image. You know, I mean, I don't know.
It looks good. Yeah, I can see it. I mean,
you know
we
what
can.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's going to live somehow. But yeah.
So I have to take you back that first time, because I know for me, the first time I held my book when it was published, it was in my hand. What was it like the first time you got to hold something that you created? Whether it be something you mixed or something you.
Oh, it's always like was cool. I remember the first time I got my first, in fact, I think it's sitting. Hold on a second, I'll show you something here. So this right here,
Oh, wow.
let me see if I can get it.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this is called, it's not gold or platinum. I've got a gold one, there's a platinum one up there.
Okay.
Can't remember the color they gave it. It's for 60,000. So it's like they give you one right below gold, because I think gold is 100,000 in England. But this was the first thing I ever like. Sean brought me this in the studio when we were working on the second record, and it was so cool. But I remember he handed it to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." And then I put it. He's like, "Man, look at it! Like you want it."
Yeah,
He was like, "I was like, cool. It was good." But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're in the moment. But yeah, it's like I can't remember what it was called, silver or something. And then,
Nice.
but I have to be honest with you, and I'll tell you something. This vinyl, to me, this is different because like the same way that the first time you see the first time you hear a song of yours on the radio,
Hmm.
and I had the opportunity to play with Black Grape a lot. Like, so I got to headline Reading Festival. So when you're a headliner and there's 60,000 people singing your song that you wrote, stuff like that is like,
Yeah.
you know,
Nothing like it.
but this is the first time I've ever been in a position, this whole endeavor where I'm kind of calling shots.
Yeah.
I'm not at the mercy of some manager, some A&R guy, or some committee of, and I'm not saying there's some good people I've worked with, and, but most of the great achievements in the music, and, any artist will tell you in their career, it's usually one really smart person on their side, a great manager, somebody personal to them. And then most of the great shit that goes down is in spite of the label, not because of them, and to be in a position to now sort of, and I've got I got Chris Minister and Barbara Surveys helping me. It's just the three of us really doing this. And like, it's rewarding in a different sort of way, especially, coming on talking to you and really having an opportunity to kind of call the shots for the first time. And look at the results we're getting. And that's why I'm trying to now I'm on it to listen to the fans, whatever people want, and really like not just be like a standoffish dick about it,
Right.
And most importantly, keeping everything, like I said, like up to the level it needs to be at to enhance Michael's legacy and hopefully give him one. I mean, it's like he's not, that's what this is really about, is just reminding the world of his greatness and helping to inject a little energy into some of these, like the Rockville Hall of Fame campaign, just helping a little bit. I'm not trying to say because of this, it's going to make the difference, but it just helps to shift the narrative.
Well,
And like get people's minds back focused on Michael the singer, Michael the great front man, Michael the fucking, once in a generation charismatic motherfucker who was brilliant, and that's the focus.
that's the sad thing is when I've mentioned NXS or Michael to younger people, they're like, who? And I'm like, how could you not know that? And that's when you start feeling your age, because it's like, how do you not know this?
And then you go dun 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 dun, dun.
Yeah.
And then again, you go, it's on in Trader Joe's. I mean, I've had that thing 1,000 times, and then it's like, and then if I have to, I fucking show them one video. It's like, oh shit, there's nobody that doesn't know who they are. They might not be aware,
Right.
But everybody knows in excess, whether they realize it or not.
Do you think they'll actually ever get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah, they'll get in. I think they'll get in. They'll get in because there's too much. I think, and this is, again, it's just the only thing that's more holding it back than anything. Well, there was one reason that's been eliminated, and I think, but I think it's also, like again, this is just a way more positive sheen to all around this now as opposed. So, even like, again, there's been no negative blowback about this release. And I think it would just be nice to see everything settle into a positive ambiance around the band. And I think someone like them would step in, because you still need like a Bono or a Simon Le Bon or somebody to kind of, who's going to induct them?
Well, right. Who's going to induct them and who's going to sing?
Who's going to lend their name to it? Well, they're a lot more likely to do it if there's positive shit surrounding the band, or no negative shit. And there hasn't been any negativity, and it's good. That's what I want. I mean, it would have been real easy for me to just start attacking people and talking a bunch of shit. And unfortunately, we live in a world where positive stories aren't really like paid attention to and rewarded very often, But I think this is one of those unique cases where people will, once they start wrapping around their head around everything, and they will, it doesn't have to be everything, because that would, I mean, think of how ironically fucked up that would be to use tabloid culture to help promote a person who was kind of like, fucked by tabloid culture.
Yeah, it would not be a good thing.
So my mission is just to, like, I only got control over what I'm doing, and I'm trying to, just keep everything like, just be honest and straight, and try to keep the promises we make, and then just, keep it positive and get people to remind people of Michael's greatness and in turn, his whole career. The band he was in, there's so much cool shit they did. I think that will take care of itself then, that whole the
Well, I mean, Tim can't play now. His hand's screwed. So it'll be interesting when they are
Which hand
inducted.
did he fuck up? Was it
I
his left?
don't know. I don't know which hand. I just know that he
I
fucked up
heard
his
about
hand.
that too. But well, it's not so much about what they could do now. I mean, it's about
No,
what they, and
it's
what they
about what
did.
they, yeah. And they, at one point, were the band, as you said.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were like for sure. And I mean, yeah, and it's funny because that was like, in the conversations I've had with a couple of the people really pushing to get that to happen. It's like, it's not about any, like, yeah, they check all the boxes. It's not even a question. It's about the will of the powers that be
Right.
and the things that need to happen to happen. It's not
I mean, to be fair,
the boxes like in spade. It's like, come on, you kidding? I think, I mean, I'm not, I think they sold either 50, I can't get it straight. I mean, AC/DC, let us not forget AC/DC now.
mhm,
They sold a lot of records, but them and AC/DC are definitely the two greatest
yeah.
exports from Australia. Yeah, he's an icon, they're iconic. It's just,
Well, I mean, the funny thing is when it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then when I look at people that have been recently inducted, no, I'm not knocking anybody. I just don't consider them rock and roll. Dolly Parton is not rock and roll.
but I would push back on that a little bit. I
Okay,
agree with you. There's a lot of people in there that are not rock and roll, but
sure.
the style of the music isn't why they're not rock and roll. And you know what? Dolly Parton kind of is rock and roll.
She is a badass, and she is, yeah. I'll give you that.
Her music isn't. So that to me is the more
Okay.
annoying part of it. Isn't so much the style of music, because trust me, nobody's fucking more rock and roll than Public Enemy.
Sure.
I tell you that right now. You know what I mean? And there's people that have made that argument when it comes to them. And I was lucky enough to work with them. There ain't nobody more rock and roll than NWA. So, and I'm a big lover of that's, that's when I was coming up. That's my generation. But I totally agree with what you're saying. So it's all how you look at it. And it's definitely moving in a direction where it's going to be less and less about what the artist stood for and what they meant, and just sort of superficial, let's call it, achievements, But I mean, the other side of that is they're running out of people, so they're going to have to fucking let them in sooner or later. Otherwise, it's just like, I can't believe James didn't do it.
It's just, I've heard it. There's
so
a lot.
Stupid. I sent David, because I'm friendly with David and Steven, and I sent them both text congrats. I thought they had gotten in. I didn't realize they were nominated. They were just nominated. How can Jane's Addiction, again, that's just like Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
There's a whole.
I hear it's very political,
no
though.
Fucking Nirvana without Jane's Addiction. There's
Sure.
there's a whole generation of alternative artists that are all standing on the shoulders of the Peppers, rightly or and Jane's Addiction. But then Perry's impact just from doing Lollapalooza alone would have been enough.
But
so it's all, that's why, like the thing, it's not so much about being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's like the award, it's being recognized and acknowledged. Like, who gives a shit about the Rock and Roll fucking Hall of Fame? It's stupid. It's just the event. It's just an excuse to spend a lot of money and hopefully promote a career. But, I don't even think if you get inducted, maybe the principals, I think you got to buy a table and, it's a money-making operation, but it's the acknowledgement, and taking your place in history at the table. And that's what Michael and his band needs to happen. Michael deserves to take his place at the pantheon because he's right up there. And I was saying the other day, it's like if Jim and Jimmy and Janice and, are like sitting around the table, Michael's definitely standing right there behind him. You know what I mean? Like he's right there in that conversation of all-time great frontmen. So that to me is why it matters. It's not because of.
No, I mean, I saw him back in 1986, and seeing him, there was nothing to just There was nobody else like him. The way he moved, the way he was fluid. I mean, there was nothing like him. And if we can remember him for those moments and not for the crap that was put out after near his demise, that's where we have to be. We have to look at what he created and wonder sometimes what he actually might have created more of.
Well, there you go. And that's hopefully what this will do, just give, like kind of just a little glimpse into what might have been and remind the people of how great he was. And just, put a little bit, like I said, a little happier ending on a story that just kind of didn't have one. And, just set cement in stone their
Mhm.
position, so.
Well, I thank you, Danny, for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Nigel Hartigan, a rock star in the limelight with a flourishing music career, a talented spouse, and a lovely daughter, conceals a dark secret as he spirals into a haze with the power goddess. Nigel experiences extreme highs and lows, revealing an inner beast. As he descends further into the clutches of the goddess, Nigel plunges to rock bottom, consumed by a delusional world where debauchery rules. Struggling for survival, he faces a difficult choice between his affection for the power goddess and his musical mistress, and the life he once cherished. My Days with the Dark Muse, a Better to Burn Out novel, is available at most online booksellers. As always, the podcast, well, it was interesting. My guest, I mean, this is one thing I love about doing the show is that I get people from all walks of life that can talk about almost anything. And Danny definitely had a lot of stories to tell. I think what he's done with Michael's songs, with the clips that he has, that he's bringing them to life, that he's giving Michael a little bit more of a voice, is impressive. And it's something that I know the fans adore and fans love. Michael had a lot of life. Michael was a very passionate person. And to have his legacy continue on and not from the darkness and the sadness that was there, well, it means a lot. And it's important that his legacy continue. You know, every year there's a campaign to get NXS into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And when they do, they'll get Michael in there as well. And I think that it's something that they deserve. At one point, as Danny said, they were the biggest band around. They sold out Wembley. And I mean, I remember in an interview, Michael saying, yeah, our champagne tab was more than what we made at Wembley. And that's when you're doing it because of the passion, because of the energy. And, you know, you're vulnerable as when you put yourself out there to be a singer, to be anybody in the public eye. But when you're putting yourself front and center to entertain 90,000 people, it takes an extraordinary person because not everybody can do it. Only a few can. And that takes power and persona and passion, drive, and love. And that's something that Michael had. But Danny was my guest. And while we talked about Michael, Danny has done a lot. And he knew at a very young age that he wanted to be that musician. And my comment to my stepdaughter about don't do it if you don't love it. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody because you can love something one minute and hate it the next and then still go back to it. But if you do it and it feels hollow and there's no passion in it, then maybe it's not for you. Maybe your passion lies somewhere else, and that's okay. Don't allow somebody to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. And hey, if you feel the need to be a bass player or to be a musician and you're not passionate about it right now, you're just doing it to get the girls or the likes or whatever, then tell me to fuck off. That's okay. Because you know what? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know you. You know, when I look back and I think back to wanting to be the bass player, well, I'm not a bass player, not in reality, but in my books, my characters, yeah, I have some bass players in there. And that's what matters because I took something that I wanted to do when I was a teenager and I've turned it into a different dream. So follow your passion, follow your creative truth, and surround yourself with people that believe in you and trust you. I'm not saying people that say yes all the time to you, but people that really have your best interest at heart and that care about you. And as he said about the studio, you have to create that environment. You have to surround yourself with that energy because once you have that energy flows. And that's what's important. So, on that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank my guest, Danny Saber, for coming on the show and discussing. Yes, it's a little bit longer than normal, but you know, it happens. Still, the highest one I've talked to, I guess, is 4 hours. 2 hours made it to air, but 4 hours total. But I want you guys to enjoy and learn things. And I hope this episode touches you guys a lot. Anyway, on that note, I also wanted to say that I have some pictures of meeting in excess back in the day, and I'll put those up on my Instagram page for the podcast. So I thank you guys for tuning in. As I said, I thank Rich Tsai from 30 Year Audio Productions for doing the audio and the sound. And I'd like to thank Fast Susie for the intro and outro music, and my guest, Danny Saber, of course. So thank you guys. And whenever you listen to it, I hope you enjoy the show, whether it be morning, noon, evening, or night. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.